The last European Parliament elections of the 20th century left an uncertain view of the future of European citizenship with low turnouts, apathy, and a lack of media debate on EU policies, raising the question as to when this level of governance would be balanced by public participation. Je pense, donc je vote, the slogan of the European Parliament's promotional campaign in France to encourage voters to participate in the 1999 European elections, struck a spectacularly false note. The citizens, not only of France, but of Europe as a whole, reacted with striking indifference to the prospect of the fifth direct elections to the world's only transnational parliament. During the elections held on the 10th to the 13th of June, voter turnout declined in most of the 15 member states, with an average of less than half of the eligible electorate participating for the first time since 1979. Media coverage of the contest was notably subdued even in the countries where general elections were held on the same day, such as Belgium and Luxembourg. Throughout the European Union, there was a lack of significant choices being shaped or resolved, both at the national and continental levels. As described by David Butler, the European elections of 1999, like their predecessors, resembled tactical exercises without actual engagement, a theoretical, self-contained war of interests among the political leaders. In 1999, all 15 member states implemented various forms of proportional representation, marking the first time this voting system was used universally. As a result, the composition of the Fifth European Parliament, elected through universal suffrage, differed significantly from both its predecessor and the expectations based on opinion polls. Most remarkably, there was a notable shift in the positions of the two largest groups. The Party of European Socialists experienced a loss of 30 seats, while the European People's Party gained over 20 additional seats, emerging as the largest group in the new assembly. The Greens also experienced significant developments. By the same token, voters defied the downward trend in participation in only 4 countries: Belgium, Spain, Ireland, and Portugal. Belgium, for example, stands out as voting is compulsory, and the elections coincided with national parliamentary elections. The slight increase in turnout in Ireland and Spain was due to the presence of a referendum or a large number of local elections held on the same day. Generally, countries with mandatory voting, Belgium, Luxembourg and Greece, or strong social customs, Italy and Spain, exhibit higher turnout. The northern states, Britain, the Netherlands, Finland and Sweden, generally have the lowest turnout, although Denmark and Ireland had over half of their registered voters participating. For the first time, both France and Germany had a turnout below 50%. Overall, the 1999 European elections highlight the worsening challenge of communicating the relevance of the European Parliament to citizens in most EU states. Besides, there was significant variation in visibility among EU countries during the elections. In most Scandinavian and Mediterranean countries, as well as Austria, election coverage accounted for at least 13% of all political coverage. However, in the UK, Spain, both parts of Belgium, Ireland, the Netherlands and Germany, election coverage amounted to no more than 6% of political coverage, with virtually no coverage in the Netherlands, Germany and Flanders. In the majority of countries, EU representatives were more visible in political news compared to non-EU representatives, providing the EU with some representation in the European election campaign. However, there was also a significant group of countries where EU representatives were rarely seen, indicating a decline in their newsworthiness over time. The second-order nature of European elections, observed since the first elections, is further reflected in the coverage of EU representatives. The repetitive and unexciting nature of these elections has resulted in limited media coverage of EU representatives. In contrast, the novelty of European elections in new EU member countries generated greater coverage of EU representatives in line with research on news value. And yet, in 5 old EU member states, no more than 10 EU representatives were featured in the 2 most prominent television outlets. Given the significant role that media plays in democratic processes, it is crucial to address the representation deficit of the EU in TV news coverage in certain EU countries. The coincidence or proximity to national elections continues to be a significant factor in all member states. This is evident as high turnout observed in Belgium and Luxembourg, where voting is obligatory and national parliamentary elections were held at the same time. Similar reasons contributed to the increased turnout in Ireland and Spain. Conversely, the decline in voter participation in Finland, along with the election outcome, can be attributed to voter fatigue following closely held national elections in March. In Austria, where national elections took place in early October 1999, the European elections were seen as a precursor to the upcoming real battle by both politicians and the media. The 1999 European elections were also seen as a preparatory step for competing national parties in Greece and Spain, where national elections were scheduled for 2000. In case of Britain, the institutional context was shaped not by the proximity of national elections, but rather by the aftermath of elections, to the devolved parliaments in Cardiff and Edinburgh, as well as the introduction of a new electoral system for the European elections. Party leaders in each member state approached the elections based on their preconceptions of the national differentiated context. Factors such as institutional arrangements, electoral rules, political competition, economic conditions, and media structures influenced voter attitudes and priorities. The coincidence of national, regional, local elections or referendums in certain countries shifted the focus of debates to national political issues. Surprising results were seen in Luxembourg, where the socialists faced losses in the national parliament. In Belgium, the meat contamination scandal dominated the campaign. Greek parties focused on domestic issues in preparation for upcoming national elections. Campaigns in Portugal were seen as a popularity contest before the real elections in 2000. France witnessed internal battles within each political camp, while Germany had a low-profile campaign. Italy saw active campaigning by Berlusconi in Forza Italia, with the media paying significant attention. Lack of interest was observed in the UK, except for the Greens, UK Independence Party, and nationalists in Scotland and Wales. The Labour government, having made the decision to change the electoral system, appeared to have forgotten about the campaign. This lack of attention and inspiration from Labour contributed to an anticipated significant defeat. Interestingly, during a crucial period of the campaign, Labour's campaign manager went on holiday to France. Different EU countries report and perceive common institutional and political developments at the EU level in varying ways. In 1999, there were significant policy and institutional changes that had the potential to bridge the gap between national contexts and increase citizen engagement in the campaign. These developments included the freezing of exchange rates in Eurostates and the transfer of monetary policy management to the European Central Bank in January, as well as the implementation of the Amsterdam Treaty in May, which enhanced the powers of the European Parliament in scrutinizing appointments and influencing EU legislation. Communicating the significance of institutional changes to voters proves to be a challenge. Another important EU-level development is the slow progress and cautious approach towards EU enlargement, including the admission of Central and Eastern European states. Reforms to existing policies and institutions, particularly in agriculture, are necessary for successful enlargement. However, attempts by the PES and EPP groups to run trans-European campaigns on common issues were hindered by the dominance of national party machinery and media structures. None of the aforementioned developments have had a positive impact on the electorate. The increased power of the European Parliament remains largely theoretical and hasn't been prominently featured in media reporting. Despite the Parliament's more confrontational stance towards the European Commission, it has failed to significantly influence public perceptions of the directly elected Assembly. The mixed signals sent by the Parliament's role in the Commission crisis have contributed to this lack of impact. Initially, major political groups did not intend for the Commission to resign, and the socialist PES group even advocated for collective responsibility to protect individual commissioners, many of whom were socialists. However, this strategy backfired as evidence of misconduct emerged, leading to the dramatic resignation of the Commission. The 1999 European Parliament elections once again function as national events, with candidates representing national parties and a focus on national issues. voters. Analyzing the messages conveyed by citizens to their leaders through these elections is a delicate task, as the results exhibited significant cross-national diversity in the absence of clear trans-European trends similar to the 1994 elections. The main reason for low voter turnout in 1999 appears to be a sense of alienation from the parliament in the electoral process. Widespread ignorance about the parliament, its work, and its influence persists, particularly exacerbated by a lack of understanding about the electoral system in the UK. Among those informed about the European Parliament and its activities, there is substantial criticism regarding wastefulness, minor corruption, such as travel expenses, and limited participation of certain MEPs. Not to mince words, the EP as a whole has faced widespread press criticism for its failures and perceived ineffectiveness, notably in preventing misconduct by commissioners, resulting in the resignation of the entire Commission.